Alright, so what I'm about to do is an oil change on a Western HTS. Now, the weather's looking kind of marginal right now. I think I got some rain coming shortly, so I gotta try and get this done as quickly as possible. So, first thing you gotta do is remove your plastic weather cover. Move that off to the side. And next thing you gotta do is you gotta pull your drain plug. This is your reservoir right here, and down here is just your drain plug. So I'm gonna go get a pan, and we're gonna start draining this oil. Alright, so I got my drain pan in place here, and now all you got to do is remove this this drain bolt right here. I just loosened it up with an adjustable wrench, and it's about ready to come off. There she is. I'm going to remove the top cap. That way it'll flow a little bit easier. Set that cap off to the side. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is grab a paper towel, and I'm going to spray that off real quick. Alright, there's some dirt around here, and if you just want to do a basic oil change, all you have to do is reinstall the drain plug and you can refill this. But I believe there's a filter in this reservoir here, so I'm going to try and keep this as sanitary as possible. That way you don't get any crud back inside here when I go to put it back on. And it's a good idea to just keep this clean anyway. Alright, so now I need to get a flathead screwdriver, and I'm going to remove this cap. Okay, again, so what I'm doing right now is I'm removing the reservoir, and if I haven't said so already, the reason why I do that is I believe inside here is a filter, and I just want to be sure that that's clean. And now, if I remember correctly, there's just an O-ring on the inside of this, and it should just kind of come off. There she is. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oops. Alright, no damage. Alright, so looking on the inside of this, I just want to be sure that everything's clean, in good shape. I want to look for any flakes of metal, which I don't see anything, which is really good. Now I'm just inspecting the filter, which the filter looks crystal clean. I also need to inspect the O-ring, and that's what keeps the seal on the reservoir here, which that appears to be good. In very good shape, so I'm not worried about that. Now, before I put this back on here, I'm just going to take a cloth, or a rag rather, and I'm going to wipe down the inside. So I'm just going to wipe down the inside, drain out any excess oil. Alright, now, I'm simply going to put this back on here. Just checking everything out again. Everything looks real good. Okay. So I'm going to gingerly slide this back on. Very careful with the O-ring. Just trying to get the bolt holes lined up, which I just did. I'm going to take the bolts and I'm going to put those back on clearly. You don't want to torque these down too much because they are housed in aluminum housing, and what's really keeping this thing sealed off is that rubber O-ring. So I'm only putting about maybe 10-15 pounds on these at the most. Alright, so that's in good shape. I'll wipe down my plow a little bit. I got oil all on her, which isn't a bad thing because that will actually help keep the rust and corrosion off of it. Alright, now all I need to do is pretty much reverse the process of how I started this, and I just need to reinstall the drain plug. Just checked on the bottom real quick to make sure there weren't any metal filings, which there were not, which is always good. Really should wear rubber gloves throughout this whole process though. Probably better for you. Can't imagine this hydraulic oil is good to have on your skin. Oh well, sometimes you just gotta get the job done. And now, if you're wondering how often I change my oil, I change it every 2 years. Really, you should change it annually. On the snowplow pump, I do only do it every 2 years. On my truck though, I do change the oil every year, and I always change it right before winter. That way I got fresh oil here, because I know my truck works the hardest in the winter. Alright, now I need to fill this thing up with some plow oil. Always try to use Western brand. I imagine there isn't anything super special about it. I just trust that it's a good brand. That's what the manufacturer recommends, so. I've never really been taught a proper way to ensure that you have this filled up to the top, so the way I always do it is I always overfill it, and then the cap is actually somewhat of a special cap, which I think we're pretty good right now. But this cap is designed so that if you overfill this, when the oil goes back into the reservoir tank, any excess fluid will actually escape throughout the cap. What I plan to do now is I'm going to reinstall the cap. Take everything away from the plow. And now I'm just going to run the plow through a couple cycles and see if I get any overflow or any problems. Alright, what I was talking about just a minute ago, let's take you over to the plow, and you'll see that there's some overflowing at the top of the reservoir from all the oil on the housing, so that tells me that I definitely have this full enough. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to inspect around the O-ring to make sure that there's nothing leaking, which there's not, so we are in good shape. Now, the only other thing that I do want to check, which I mentioned in another video, is I just want to check all my electrical connections. I really like this design. I was really worried about the HTS design at first, because with this cap, it just kind of hooks on there, and I felt like there was some room for the weather to come in here, but it's actually done a very good job of keeping all the moisture and water out. Mind you, every year I do come in here with some dielectric grease, and I just spray all these connectors to ensure that I give them some type of protection. But overall, I mean, everything's still really clean, other than like a little bit of spider web here and there and a little bit of dirt, but there's no corrosion, which is excellent. So alright, so that pretty much concludes a basic oil change on your Western HTS snowplow. This is not how to completely flush the system. This is just draining out whatever's in the reservoir and replacing it with new oil. We mentioned you want to look for any filings in there. You want to just ensure that nothing looks really wrong in there. Make sure that there's no corrosion or anything like that, which we did. Inspect your O-ring on your reservoir, which we did. Everything looks fine. We just checked all our electrical connections, so on that note, we are good to go. Last thing that you need to do is just reinstall the cover.